Right. So yesterday we discussed about a few more basic things like what is function closures, right? What are function closures and how do we deal with them? Function closures and one more option we need to understand about function recursion. Function recursion. So function closure, function recursion, and anonymous function. Anonymous function. So what is anonymous function? Remember that pointer we discussed already. What is anonymous function? Anonymous function is, function will not have a name. Function without name, right? Generally, where we use anonymous functions, that is another regular question asked actually. So good. We use anonymous functions in callback. We use the anonymous function in callback. And function recursion. Recursion is nothing but it is a technique. It is a technique of calling a function within its own context, within the context. Within the context means you are calling a function within that function. If you are calling a function within the function, it is called recursion. That means it allows to execute the function repeatedly until the given condition is satisfied. So it uses recursion technique. That means recursion is actually used for performing the same activity repeatedly until the given condition is satisfied. It's not looping like. We are calling a function inside the function. That means we have a function and this function is called inside that function. So the function is called inside the function again. This mechanism is called recursion actually. We need this recursion to do some task repeatedly again and again. That means what happens is first the function will execute. After executing, again the same function will execute. It will continue that until the condition is satisfied actually. I will show you a simple example how we can handle. So these examples I will give you. One is the function closure. So one is function closure. So for function closure, this is the example. So this is an example for function closure. Let me give a simple note about that point is, it is function closure is a technique. So where the inner function can return value, so which is accessible to the outer function. That means outer function can return value of inner function. That is the technique of function closure actually. And this is an example for that. So function closure yesterday I given to you. And another option is function recursion. Function recursion is, so it is a technique of accessing a function. So within the context. That means So a function is called called within the context. So to perform the actions repeatedly. So that is what actually function recursion is. Let's see how this recursion works actually. One simple example for that. So suppose I'm creating a function here. So function, and I said fact. Fact is a function which is expecting some n number. If n is less than or equal to 0, if n is less than or equal to 0, then it should return. So it return 1. Return 1 is true. 1 is true. That means it will stop. It will stop. Once it is equal to 0, it will stop. So it will not continue. Else, what should happen here is, so technically, once it is not equal to 0, then here we are defining it should return n into so fact of n minus 1. That's what it has to return. That means we are calling this fact function. We are calling the fact function within that context again. That means within the fact function, you are calling the function again. We are defining and calling the function again. So technically, so if it is suppose let's see here, that means it is returning. That means I am saying document.write factorial of 5. So, and I need to print that. I call the fact function and into that I will pass 5. That means initially the value of n is 5. So, and it will check is 5 is less than 0? No. Then it will go to the else block. So 5 into, so this is fact n minus 1. That means 5 minus 1. 5 minus 1 is 4 actually, 4. That means it will return 4 and that 4 into the 5. That means important, it will return that 4 into 5. After that, this into the fact, now 4 is passed. Into the fact when 4 is passed, that means this fact function executes again. Now again, next time it will be 4 minus 1, 3. It will multiply and it will be reduced. So still some important points are there here. So this is actually the mechanism of recursion. It returns that value here. Recursion is nothing but, that means a function is called within the context. So it is called within that context. So it is not looping actually, but it is a technique of executing the same function again and again without any iterations, without any looping. We can do that by calling a function inside another function. And when you call a function inside another function, it will repeat until the condition is satisfied. Suppose I say fact of 6, then fact of 6, and it will perform that until it is 6, then it will get that value and display. So technically, generally if anybody asks like, where do we use such functions? These kind of mathematical operations, not only that, generally recursions are mostly used for handling. Recursion is mostly used for handling batch operations. Batch operations, nothing but batch operations means generally A task is performed continuously until we stop it. That means infinite condition will be there. So that is batch operation. For example, I will show you. Suppose I opened run option, window run. Here I am using a command ping-t and an IP address 127.0.0.1. This is to test whether a remote server which is connected to my network is currently responding or not. When I ping this, click OK, you can see that this command is continuously pinging and response is coming. Remember, this operation will not stop until I stop it manually. It is continuing. That means it is continuing until I stop. If you leave it for 5 days, 10 days, 100 days, it will continue. It will never stop until you stop. Suppose when you are writing a loop, generally, you will write a condition for loop 10 times, 20 times, 30 times. Iteration also until the value is present. But we want some operations to perform repeatedly again and again until we explicitly stop. If I press Ctrl C, then it will stop. When I press Ctrl C, it will explicitly stop. These are called batch operations. Such operations require calling of a function within the function actually. We are calling the function within the function and defining it. That's what generally batch operations are. So these kind of mathematical operations and another batch operations are managed by using this recursion technique. This is a recursion technique. Recursion means calling a function within the function again to perform the task repeatedly until the condition is satisfied or until explicitly it is terminated. That's what actually recursions are. In interviews, these are regular questions. That is the reason we have to discuss them in a separate point. What are function closures? So what is function recursion? What are anonymous functions and all? Another important point is about arrow functions. Arrow functions. Arrow functions are nothing but, so JavaScript can use lambda. So they can use lambda expression. JavaScript can use lambda expression. So to minify the function definition. That means you can write the functions in a short way. We can configure the function in a short way. That means function and its definition can be minified by using this technique. So arrow functions allows you to make the function definition simplified. It's more easier, convenient method of configuring. It's very simple. Configuring the function is very simple. Actually, here, generally, the functions are defined with a simple characters like a parenthesis. This is used for parameters, and implies. So this is used for a return value. That is used for return value. So these are used for configuring the function and defining the function. That means we can write the function in a short way. The parameters are not required until the parenthesis is not required until more than one parameter is present. If there is no more than one parameter, you don't need this parenthesis at all. So generally, when you are dealing with function, observe here when you are configuring and dealing with the function here. So I will access this here. I will write here a simple functionality like, so here we are defining, so var some hello, and it is a function. That means here we are defining msg. So implies or say, so it is name implies, and some value, some expression I am defining. So welcome. So, or simply I said hello, and dollar name. So dollar name. This is a simple one line operation. Actually, this hello is now a function, This function is expecting a parameter name. This is parameter, and it is a return value, what it is going to return. That means if I say here document.write, hello is a function. This hello function is expecting a parameter. Parameter is John, and this parameter is accessed and used here. So that means this is the function parameter, and this is the function return. And you can see that this is going to print hello John. So that means actually, so this is the lambda style. This is the arrow function. This is arrow function. Normally, how you define this? So without arrow, that means traditional technique, how you do that? Var high is equal to, so we write a function, and into the function we will define name, and in that we will return, and here we will return, so hello. So we say hello, and dollar, that name we have to access and use it. That's how generally we write the function and configure the function. And that means here we are writing document.write, and high is a function. Into that some value we have stored here, and that is how we define. This is the traditional approach of writing a function, which is this is defined in a shorthand way. This is defined in a shorthand way. So this is a shorthand notation of configuring the function. So both are working fine. Only the point here is, I will just put a break here just for printing in a new line, any value configuring and printing in a new line. It will be this way. So technically, so we are using a minified option. 5-6 lines that you are writing, everything will be wrapped into one. It can be configured and wrapped into one. So technically, that's what actually the functions and the function definition, how you define. So if there is no parameter also, generally, if there is no parameter, let me give this example first. So this is an example here, and we are configuring this and adding this. Yeah. So if there is no definition, for example, see here, we are simply writing, so where hello is equal to an empty parenthesis and implies, and here we are writing document.write, so some hello world, something like this. We are defining like this. Now this is a function. So this is a function because you cannot write directly implies, so that you cannot directly write implies without writing about parameters. Parameter definition is mandatory. If there is a parameter, you define the parameter. If there is no parameter, then you have to use an empty parenthesis. And this is now the definition of the function. That means it is going to print this line. And very important is, suppose here I am printing. So we have to call hello function. and you can see it is going to print that value hello world. For example, this is how we can define a function. This is how we can define a function. So without parameter, that means function. So without parameter, without parameter, how you can configure. Suppose there are multiple lines to be used by the function. That means this is one line. Suppose there are multiple lines. Suppose document dot write hello world. So, and here I have to write another statement, document dot write, and I said, so welcome to JavaScript. Like this, I written another statement here. Now here we are using two statements, and you can see welcome to JavaScript and hello world. It is displaying these options, but actually the problem is, so this is not working. This is not working as a part of function. It is separately printing. If it is separately printing, that means now actually it is using that sentence as first because it is separately printing. After that hello function is called. But we want that as a part of that particular function. If there are multiple lines, use a curly brace here. Use a curly brace to enclose all the functions here. That means that makes sense. That makes correct. That means in the function there can be multiple lines also. If there are multiple lines, then you can use this curly brace. So block. That block is not required. That block is not required if there is only one line. But if there are multiple lines, then you cannot directly write those multiple lines. You have to define in a block. So that means you have to configure in a block. That means this is an example for function. So with multiple lines to define. So this is the function with multiple lines, how you configure function with multiple lines. So you have to enclose that in a block and configure that in a block for defining multiple lines. So function can have multiple parameters also. Function can have multiple parameters. Multiple parameters can be defined directly here. That means suppose we are configuring. So where print is equal to. So here we have some name and price. This is multiple parameters and implies, and we are printing the details. So that means here we are printing the details. Name is equal to $name. And in the next line, so price is equal to $price. That is how we have to configure and define the values. Now when you are calling the print method, so print method, into that we have to pass the two values into the print method. And better I will give this because print is a reserved method. So I will just use P uppercase. Okay. So print method, and it is expecting two parameters. One parameter is name. It is a string type, some name. And another parameter is price, that is a number type. And we are configuring that printed number type. So you can see that means now it is accessing the parameters and using the parameters, which we need to print them. So it is returning them. We have to print them. Then we have to use document.write. So it should print these values. So it should print those values. So that means it is printing the values and displaying. So because here we are just returning that string concatenation. So we have to print that. Then we can just use document write for accessing the print and returning the values. There can be multiple parameters. All types of parameters that you have learned, you can use them. That means you can define a function with multiple parameters. And that is how we define the parameters and use. This is arrow notation. This is lambda notation. These expressions will make your functionality more faster and easier. Querying will be more simplified actually. Querying will be more simplified. So it makes the querying more simplified and easy for you. So for example, how querying can be more simplified. One example I will show you. Suppose, so here we have some products, and products is an array of objects. The product name, some name, and product have a category. Category is some electronics. So electronics like this. And we have another name. So some Nike casuals. So casuals, and the category is some footwear. Okay. Now another name. So some watch. So some category. So we defined as some electronics. So now the point is here, I want to extract and display. I want to extract and display only the electronic products from this array. That means I will put here, so electronics. In this we want only electronic products. Then usually if you want to get only those products and display, so we can use products.filter. So already we know that filter uses a function inside it. Actually filter uses a callback function. Traditionally how you write, we have to write a function. So the function will have parameter and return values. But now it becomes very simple for us. What I can do now, into the filter, I can simply define first parameter. Parameter is, so I will say product. Okay. Product is the parameter which will collect every product from this collection. Okay. Then implies. And I said product dot category is equal to electronics. Category is equal to electronics. That's simple. That means earlier now this is the parameter. Through the parameter you can access the object, and what you are doing is you are returning only the products whose category is matching with electronics. Earlier, traditional way I will tell you. Traditional way how we do this, where so ELE, just roughly. So here I am writing products.filter. Traditionally, we need a function. So, and in this function, we have to pass product, and this product have to return. So it should return. So product.category is equal to electronics. That's how we need to define. So that's how we need to configure. Now this lengthy function representation can be just wrapped into this one line and display. So that means we don't need to write the function in this way. It is easy for filtering the data. So we don't need to write the entire, just we can define in a shortcut manner. So this is the advantage of the function, arrow functions. The finally result is in electronics. I will say for, so where item of electronics, I want to print document.write item.name. That means the product name, and BR, line break. That means it should get all the electronic products and print it. So it is going to get all the electronic products and print it. That is a simple approach. That is the approach simply how you can query the contents and access and use the contents. So this approach makes easy for us for querying. So it is easy for defining the functions and accessing. Actually, this is a function only. And this is the function parameter product. It is the function parameter product. And that function parameter is verifying. This is the definition. It is returning that value. So that return value will be used by the filter to get the detail and display it. Such querying, everything can be easily done by using these type of lambda expressions. So querying with lambda functions, right? So that is what actually, so lambda expression, we call it as a lambda expression. And through that lambda expression, we can easily query the data and get the data and use. These type of operations are very much required in the next generation of technologies that you are going to use. So that means any JavaScript based programming you are doing and you have to deal with the functions in a shorthand way, then this is the way that you have to follow. That is the approach we need to follow technically. So that's the reason we need to be aware of how we can define a shortcut way. So of course, when you minify, generally, so minification will take care about compressing your code, making it short. But this lambda allows the developers to easily query the contents and access and use the contents without minification also, right? It is simply like developer is directly using a minification technique. It makes coding simplified, so faster and easy to handle. So these are the arrow functions, how we can manage and use the arrow functions. What is the basic syntax and how do we deal with them, right? So while working with functions, these are all the regularly used options. These are all the regularly used options. So that's the reason we need to aware of this. That means what are the function signatures, what are the function recursions, anonymous functions, and the arrow functions. Right? So this is about various options related to function. And all object-oriented features, what is difference between function methods, all these are regularly asked in interviews. That's the reason technical terms you need to remember. So sometimes you know it, but if you forgot the technical term, then you will feel like you haven't learned about it. But actually you learned it. Only the problem is you forgot the technical term for that. Sometimes in interviews, they ask what is function recursion. You may think like it is a separate topic. You may think like it is a separate, but actually you know it. So it is just a function within the function with the approach that we have learned. So you have to remember all these technical. I will give you some FAQs in the next sessions related to all these topics. So which are regularly asked in interviews for entry level and experienced people also. Okay. So these are all the functions and options what you have to know in JavaScript. So this is all you have to know in JavaScript. So this is, I will save this. Yeah, so I will upload this into our classroom notes and this one. Yeah. Now, after understanding this, now you are completely aware of the language, JavaScript language. So whatever till date we have learned, everything is JavaScript language. And remember, in this language, we learned all old, new features, everything. That means we learned all the advanced options along with the old options available. So that is the reason no need to classify. So already I told you when we were discussing different topics that these are newly added into JavaScript. So whatever you have learned that is related to JavaScript, so that is related to JavaScript advanced options. In JavaScript advanced options, so and another important is newly. So newly added options in JavaScript are two more collections which you need to know. That is about maps and sets in JavaScript. So this is also maps, maps and sets in JavaScript. These are new into JavaScript and which are very popularly used now in various advanced programming. That is the reason we need to understand about what is a map, so what is a set, and how to use the maps and sets in JavaScript programming. So these are also important because these days in advanced programming, so a lot of options are used related to maps and sets actually. Let's take an example. So let's take an example, right? How we can deal with map and sets. So what are actually maps and sets and what they are in JavaScript? We need to understand about that. Technically in JavaScript, so sets are no longer much used actually. Sets are no longer much used. Currently, we are using maps regularly. So sets are not used very much because they are not having reasonable functionality as per our requirements in the real world environment. That's the reason we are not much using this. But what are those maps and sets? I will just give you a simple example. Technically, actually, these are collections. These are collections. Map sets are collections actually. In JavaScript, so what is, because in interviews they ask this. Map is a collection of key and value. Map is a collection of key and value. So that means it is a collection of key and value. Now, actually, in your general programming, you have already learned actually. In general programming, already you learned that the object is also a key and value collection. So that means when you learned about JavaScript, so JavaScript objects are same like map. Key value collection means they contain a key and a value. That means they can store a value under the reference of key you can access. Then obviously it is same like object only. That means object is also a key value collection only. Then the question asked is, then what is difference between object and map? What is the difference between object and map, right? That is a regular question asked in interviews. So the difference is nothing but actually one of the difference is map doesn't contain any key by default. So map contains only user defined keys, but object contains by default key. Suppose in object you mentioned like this, and actually in object you mentioned the first object and you define some name and some TV. Actually this name is not a general key. Actually the first value is referred with 0. That means at 0 index it is having that name. That means name is not its actual key. 0 is its actual key. Even in array also you know it's not an actual key. 0 is its actual key. That means objects have a default key. Map don't have default key. The difference table I will give you. Map don't have a default key. We have to, what is the problem is, if you are giving explicitly keys, the default keys may collide with explicit keys, existing keys. Suppose you given your key as 0, it will conflict with the default key called 0. So that is the reason. So the problem with map object is it is having default keys. Default keys may collide with explicit keys. Map don't have default keys. Another point is keys of object must be string or symbol. That means keys of an object must be string or a symbol like underscore like this. But keys of only string. Suppose I cannot give a number as a string, a key. For example, I will give you here. Suppose we are creating an object where obj, it is an object. I cannot give number as key. That is invalid. So you cannot give number as key. So even you give number here, it is treated as a string only. But what is advantage is map key can be any value, including function also you can give as a key. That means the keys in an object must be string or symbol. But keys in a map can be any data type, any data type. That is another advantage. And keys in a map are ordered. That means you can access them in a sequential order. But the keys in an object, they don't have any order. We can access randomly. Object keys can be accessed in a random way. So that means it is slow in accessing over an iteration because they don't have an order. That means suppose in an object I defined some name, and in that I defined some price, as some price, something like this. So some name, something. If I want to access all the keys and values, usually if I want to access the keys and values, it's not like first key is name, second key is price. There is no order actually. You can directly access price, you can directly access name. Map also allows that. But when you are using iterations, so if they are not having any implicit order, then reading them individually becomes difficult. It will slow down. It will slow down. That means objects reading is slow. Another point, in order to read the keys and values from an object, you need a special iterator. By using a special iterator, you have to read the keys separately, values separately. But maps can easily access the keys and values. Maps can easily access the keys and values. Another point is we cannot know the length of object. That means if it is an array have a length property, but object don't have a length property. That means in an object, how many keys are there? I don't know. You cannot limit the size of object, but you can limit the size of map. Map returns the size and it will also limit the size. It will also limit the size. So it is faster in performance. Object is slow in performance. So that is the reason. That is the reason. So now in the latest generation, so we use these maps very much. Sets we are not using anymore. So sets are better to ignore them because so more better than sets, we have maps now. From ES6 onwards, we are using these maps in JavaScript. Generally, map is a collection of key and value pairs. You can store values under reference of a key and access by using the reference of the key. And to create the maps, to create actually the maps. So we can use, so the maps are created by using. So that means technically, we can say that map is a collection of key. So you can create map. So by using the method map, you can create a map by using the method map, and you can manipulate by using some properties. Properties like we have set property, set by using set method, by using get method. So by using keys. So by using values, by using entries. So you can access, and by using has, these are all the members, by using delete, by using clear, and by using size. These are all the members, the methods used for maps, just like array, just like array. So generally, how we can configure the map, how we can add the values into the map, defining and configuring the values into the map. Let's see one simple example of how you can configure that. So I'm defining a simple example here. So let, some topics is equal to new map. We are creating map, and into that we need to put some keys and values. That means topics dot set, by using set key. Key can be any type. I am just using here HTML, that is the key, and value. So it is a markup language. That's how we are configuring. So we can put any type of any number of values, set CSS. So it defines styles. So we can configure that. Now, if you want to access and use anything, just what you have to do is document.write. So I want to print HTML related details. So that means I will just put here backtick. I want HTML related details, and we need to access the map topics.get. Which topic? HTML topic. We can easily access it, and it is going to get that and display that details here. That means we can store values under the reference of a key, and we can access the key by using this get method. So by using set, we can add values. By using get, we can get the values. That means it can get the value and it can set the value. It can get and set the value. So important, you can access all the keys. We can access all the values. Suppose if I want to access all the keys, then simply what I can do is, if I want to access all the keys, then I can simply define a simple for loop. For, so let key of topics dot keys. It will return all the keys. It will return all the keys. So then we need to print that. That means document.write. We want to print the key. So plus br line break. So this is the method of printing all the keys present inside it. It will print all the keys. If you want to print all the values, then just you have to use values. It will print all the values. That means you can access all the values. That's easy. Objects are a little bit difficult to handle. If I am using entries, entries means it will read both keys and values. Entries will read both keys and values. It is easy to collect both keys and values. If you want, you can remove any specific key. So any specific key. So for example, what you can do is topics.delete, and I am deleting CSS key. That means now there is only HTML here. We can easily delete any specific key based specific collection based on the key reference. So we can even check, is it having that or not? That means, for example, if topics dot has CSS, if it is having CSS, then it will print CSS. If it is not having CSS, then it will print something else. So that means here I will put a message here, so it will print that. If it is not having CSS, that means else document.write a CSS missing. So this option I defined. Because we deleted that CSS, then it should print CSS missing. I don't delete that CSS topic, then you can see that it is available. It can print those details. Just depending on your requirement, you can even check is it available or not by using has. You can even know how many keys are present. That means document.write. So here, so total count. What you can do is you can get here topics.size. topics.size. Topics.size, it will get total count how many elements are there, how many keys are present. In an object, this is not possible. In an object, this is not possible. So configuring the maps and working with the maps is better than objects now. That is the reason in the new generation. So here, if they have to deal with key value like collections, so majority they use these maps very much. Sets are similar to array. So we don't prefer these sets, they are outdated now. So we have to use and we need to understand only about the maps. And there are different ways of writing the map. So people write in different ways. So that's the reason, don't get confused. Here I am writing like this, topics, into that we are setting the value. Sometimes if you want to initialize anything into it, then people have an habit of writing like this. LET products is equal to new map. So new map, and into that, so we put an array, and into that array, again an array. In that number one, so that is some Samsung TV. And another array, so that is number two, and so that is some mobile, something like this. This is a technique of initializing the value. Now, what is the key name here? The key name is 1 and 2. The values are Samsung and mobile. That's how we can configure the map. This is initializing, and this is creating and later rendering the values into it dynamically. We can use this in various programming in later stages, you will understand. But in interviews, the regular question in interviews is what is difference? What is difference between an object and map? The points you should know. I will give a table showing the differences between them so that you can easily understand. Right? This is another important in advanced JavaScript. You need to know how to deal with the maps and work with the maps. Right? So this all I will give you in the notes. You can easily handle that and you can manage that. Right? Now with this, we complete all the concept of working with JavaScript. And now we have to go into jQuery. So what is jQuery? How jQuery is more better than JavaScript, and what are the advantages, and how do we use jQuery? Now it will take just 3-4 days of time to finish jQuery, because if you know JavaScript perfect, jQuery will simplify everything. Just only 1-2 days enough to handle the complete jQuery. And by using jQuery, we will build applications and we will see the screen interfaces, how to design. Okay. That we will see in the next session, right? Tomorrow we'll continue. Tomorrow we will see and work with these jQuery interactions, okay? jQuery we will start from tomorrow session, huh? Right.